The projector screen faded to black, but the footage of my brother pouring industrial bleach into the vintage reserve was already burned into the retinas of 300 investors. The silence in the tasting room was heavy, suffocating. My father, Richard, stood at the podium, his glass of so-called premium red trembling in his hand. He didn't look at the state police officers marching through the double doors. He looked right at me. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. In that second he realized his obedient daughter hadn't come home to save his legacy. I had come home to bury it. I didn't flinch. I just locked my phone screen, the evidence secure, and waited for the sound of handcuffs. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. 48 hours earlier, the only emergency I had to worry about was a mislabeled shipment of organic produce in a distribution center outside of Sacramento. My life was clean. It was precise. I was a senior food safety auditor, which meant people paid me thousands of dollars to find the rot they couldn't see and cut it out before it poisoned anyone. I was good at it because I had been practicing since I was a child. I just didn't know back then that I was training for a career. I thought I was just surviving my childhood. My phone rang at 2 in the morning. The screen lit up the dark hotel room with a single word. Mom. I stared at it. I hadn't spoken to Susan in 6 months. Not since I declined the invitation to my sister Samantha's engagement party because I refused to be a prop in their family photo ops. I knew I shouldn't answer. I knew nothing good happens at 2 in the morning. But the ringing wasn't just a sound. It was a hook dragging me up from the mattress. I swiped answer. I didn't say hello. I just listened. Susan was sobbing. Not the polite, manipulative crying she used to get a table at a booked restaurant, but real, ugly, gasping sobs. It's your father, she choked out. Lauren, it's his heart. He collapsed in the cellar. The ambulance just left. My chest tightened. Is he alive? He's in critical condition, she wept. The doctors say it was a massive cardiac event induced by acute stress. The bank called yesterday about the loans and he turned gray, Lauren. He just dropped. Stress. The universal solvent for my family's problems. It was never their bad decisions. It was always the stress of the world attacking them. But a heart attack was different. You can't fake a flatline. Or so I thought. I need you to come home, she begged. He's asking for you. He's scared, Lauren. He keeps saying he can't leave the business in this mess. Please, just come home. I should have asked for the hospital name. I should have asked to speak to a doctor. I should have stayed in my clean, safe hotel room and finished my audit. But I didn't. I got up and started packing. That is the invisible chain of the survivor. You spend years cutting them off, building walls, rewriting your phone number and telling yourself you are free. You think you have escaped the gravity of their dysfunction. But family loyalty is like a phantom limb. You cut the arm off years ago to save the body, but when the storm comes, you still feel the ache in the wrist that isn't there anymore. It's a ghost pain that demands to be soothed. It overrides your logic. It bypasses your brain and hits you straight in the nervous system. I felt that ache now. The terrifying, irrational hope that maybe this time the emergency was real. Maybe this time they actually needed me, not just what I could do for them. Maybe facing death had changed him. I drove to the airport in a daze, the phantom limb throbbing with every mile. I left my career, my schedule, and my peace behind. I boarded the first flight to Napa, telling myself I was going to save my father. I didn't know yet that I was flying straight into a trap designed to kill the only good thing I had ever built. My integrity. The Heritage Winery looked exactly like the brochures my sister Samantha sent out to high-end travel agencies. The vines were manicured, the tasting room was draped in wisteria, and the late afternoon sun hit the stone facade just right. It was a perfect rustic illusion designed to separate tourists from $40 for a tasting flight. But I was an auditor. I didn't look at the facade. I looked at the cracks in the foundation. I walked straight past the tasting room and up to the main house. I expected a hush. I expected the smell of antiseptic and the beep of monitors. Instead, I smelled rosemary and garlic. I pushed open the door to the master bedroom. My father, Richard, wasn't hooked up to a ventilator. He was sitting in his leather armchair, a napkin tucked into his collar, cutting into a medium-rare ribeye steak. A glass of our reserve Cabernet sat on the side table. He looked up, chewing slowly, and didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. You made good time, he said, swallowing. Samantha said you'd be here by 4. I stood in the doorway, my suitcase handle gripping into my palm. You're eating steak. The doctor said I need iron, he said, gesturing with his fork. And red wine is good for the heart. You said you were dying, I said, my voice flat. Mom said you collapsed. I did collapse, he snapped, the narcissism flaring up instantly. From the weight of carrying this family. From the stress of keeping this roof over everyone's head while you play food police in the city. My heart is a ticking time bomb, Lauren. And do you know what holds the detonator? The bank. They're calling the loans. So you dragged me here to ask for money? No, my mother Susan said, stepping out of the bathroom with a fresh bottle of wine. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. We don't need your money, Lauren. We need your signature. They explained it like it was a minor paperwork error. A clerical mix-up. They had a shipment, a large one destined for a major distributor, that had been flagged for quality inconsistencies. They needed a certified food safety auditor to sign an independent verification log to clear it for shipping. They needed my license number. It's just a formality, Richard said, pouring more wine. Tyler handled the production. It's top-tier stuff. But the bureaucrats want a signature. Show me, I said. My brother Tyler was waiting for me at the loading dock. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days, his eyes manic and bright. Hey sis, long time. Ready to save the empire? He led me past the gleaming stainless steel tanks of the public tour route and unlocked a heavy metal door marked Storage B. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the yeasty, fruity smell of fermentation. It was the sharp chemical sting of industrial bleach masked by heavy floral perfume. What is that smell? I asked, pulling my scarf over my nose. Cleaning agents, Tyler said dismissively. We run a tight ship. He flipped the lights. The warehouse was filled with rusted vats that looked like they had been salvaged from a scrap yard. Hoses ran across the floor through puddles of stagnant water. But the centerpiece was the assembly line. Bottles were moving down a conveyor belt. They weren't empty. They were full, dusty bottles with faded labels. A machine was stripping the old labels off. A second machine was spraying the bottles with a high-pressure solution. A third machine was laser printing new codes onto the glass. Lot 429. Vintage 2024. I walked over to a pallet of the raw material. I picked up a bottle waiting to be stripped. The label was peeling. The date was from 6 years ago. The liquid inside was cloudy. I uncorked it. The smell of vinegar and mold made me gag. This is spoilage, I said, my voice trembling with professional horror. Tyler, this is vinegar. It's rot. You can't sell this. We don't sell it like that, Tyler said, leaning against a vat of what looked like pool cleaner. We fix it. We run it through a charcoal filter to strip the color and the taste, then we add the flavor profile back in. Tannin powder, oak extract, a little red dye number 40. Good as new. That's not wine, I whispered. That's poison. It's recycling. Tyler laughed, spreading his arms like he was a visionary. Do you know how much wine gets thrown away by distributors just because it's past its prime? It's wasteful, Lauren. We're being eco-friendly. We're taking a waste product, sanitizing it and giving it a second life. It's zero-waste manufacturing. The customers don't know the difference. They see a fancy label, they taste the oak extract and they feel sophisticated. Why should we let good alcohol go down the drain just because of some arbitrary expiration date? This is the logic of the parasite. They don't see themselves as criminals. They see themselves as innovators. They believe that if they can trick you into eating the rot, they have done you a favor by not wasting it. You're bleaching moldy wine, I said. And you want me to sign a federal safety log saying this is fresh vintage. Dad needs this shipment to go out, Lauren, Tyler said, his smile dropping. If it doesn't, the bank takes the house. The stress will actually kill him this time. And it'll be your fault. I looked at the vats. I looked at the bleach. And I realized my family wasn't just messy or greedy. They were dangerous. And they had trapped me in the slaughterhouse with them. I walked back into the main house, my boots leaving faint, chemical-smelling footprints on the Persian rug. The family was waiting in the dining room like a panel of judges. Richard had finished his steak. Samantha was scrolling on her phone, probably checking engagement metrics for the winery's social media. Susan was pacing. Well, Richard asked, wiping his mouth. Did Tyler show you the operation? I saw it, I said, my voice steady despite the nausea rolling in my stomach. I saw you violating about 40 different federal health codes. I saw you turning garbage into poison. It's product, Samantha chimed in, not looking up. And we have pre-orders for 3,000 cases. I'm not signing that log, I said. I won't put my name on a felony. The room went deadly quiet. Richard's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. He stood up, clutching his chest. A performance surely, but a convincing one. After everything I've done? After I built this legacy for you? For me? I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You built this for your ego. I want no part of it. That was when Susan stepped in. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She did something far more effective. She started to cry. Soft, wounded sounds that I had been conditioned since birth to fix. She walked over and took my hands, her palms cold and clammy. Lauren, look at me, she whispered. Look at your father. He is terrifyingly fragile right now. The doctor said any shock, any major stress, could stop his heart permanently. If we lose this shipment, we lose the winery. If we lose the winery, the stress will kill him. She squeezed my hands, her eyes wide and pleading. Do you want that on your conscience? Do you want to be the reason we have to bury your father? It's just a signature, honey. It's just ink. But family is blood. You're a good daughter. I know you are. Don't kill him over some bureaucratic red tape. This is the good daughter blackmail. It is a weaponized form of love that equates compliance with affection. It tells you that your ethics are actually aggression. It reframes your integrity as a murder weapon. For a second I felt it, the crushing weight of potential guilt. If he died, even from his own choices, they would spend the rest of their lives telling me I pulled the trigger. I looked at Richard panting in his chair. I looked at Tyler leaning in the doorway with a smirk. And I realized something crystalline. I couldn't save them. They were already dead. They had drowned themselves in their own greed years ago. The only thing left to decide was whether I would let them pull me under with them. I took a deep breath and I let the daughter part of me die. In her place, the auditor stepped forward. Calculating. Methodical. I didn't pull my hands away. I softened my expression. I lied. Okay, I said, letting my shoulders slump as if defeated. Hey Mom. You're right. I can't let that happen. Richard exhaled, the tension leaving his body instantly. I knew you'd see reason. But I can't just sign a blank log, I added quickly, pivoting into the trap. The state auditors aren't stupid. If the chemical composition data on the log doesn't match the fluid dynamics of the new vintage, they'll flag it immediately. It'll trigger an automatic investigation. So fake the numbers, Tyler said. I can't fake them without a baseline, I said, channeling every ounce of professional authority I had. I need to run a sample test on the batch. I need to generate realistic data points to fill the log so it looks authentic. If I do this, I'm doing it right so we don't get caught. Richard nodded, impressed by the logic of the lie. That's my girl. Smart. Do what you need to do. I need access to the lab tonight, I said. And I need everyone out of my hair so I can focus. Done, Richard said, pouring himself another glass of the clean wine. Tyler, give her the keys. I took the keys, walked to my rental car, and didn't breathe freely until I reached stable cell service. Then I dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years. State Health Department. Daniel speaking. Daniel, it's Lauren, I said. I have a code red violation at Heritage Winery, and proof to shut it down. Back inside my father's study, I pretended to audit falsified logs while Richard hovered, confident I was fixing things for him. I claimed I needed the original deeds. Annoyed, he opened the wall safe and tossed me the envelope. When he left, I found the truth buried at the bottom. The land belonged to him, but the water rights, the spring that powered the vineyard and bottling plant, had been separated into the Patricia Heritage Trust. The trust one was about to inherit. Without the water, the winery was worthless. They weren't owners. They were squatters. I photographed everything and sent it to Daniel, then slipped into the warehouse and recorded the real evidence. Expired wine, rat droppings, standing water, open chemical drums. Bleach being poured into vats. Lies printed on fresh labels. The next night at the VIP tasting, my father proudly introduced me as the auditor who had verified the batch. Instead, I played the footage on the projector. Gasps filled the room as the doors burst open. State Health Department. Nobody move. As my family was led away in handcuffs, Richard stared at me in disbelief. I fixed the audit, I said. I cut out the rot. 6 months later, the vines were gone. In their place stood an organic water cooperative owned by the workers. The land was clean. The business was honest. I had lost my family, but I had reclaimed my name. And this time it was written on something pure.